When Emma looks through her vacation photos on the third day of their cruise, she sees something scary in the background, the same crew member watching Lucy Harrison in picture after picture. That same night, Lucy disappears from the ship forever. Emma doesn't figure out until she's in real danger that this crew member has been wearing different uniforms to follow Lucy around the entire ship, like a hunter tracking his prey. How do you escape a killer when you're trapped together on a floating city in the middle of the ocean? Emma's champagne glass nearly slipped from her hand as the massive cruise ship's horn blasted 3 times, drowning out the steel drum band playing in the crowded atrium below. The Royal Caribbean oasis of the seas was finally leaving Miami, and she could barely believe they were actually here. October 15, 2024 had arrived faster than expected, marking exactly 1 year since Ryan had proposed during their weekend trip to the Keys. "Look at this place," Ryan shouted over the music, pointing at the incredible glass elevators rising through the ship's center like something from a science fiction movie. 18 decks, Emma. We could get lost for a week and still not see everything. Emma raised her new camera, snapping pictures of everything, the excited families crowding the railings, the colorful confetti falling like snow, and Ryan's huge grin as he posed next to a life preserver ring. Through her camera lens, she watched Miami's skyline grow smaller and smaller until it looked like a toy city sitting on the horizon. The ship felt like a floating city itself. Everywhere she looked, people were celebrating, kids running around with ice cream cones, elderly couples holding hands on deck chairs, and groups of friends already planning their evening activities. The pool deck buzzed with energy as passengers claimed lounge chairs and ordered frozen drinks from smiling bartenders. "This is table 47, announced a cheerful woman with silver-streaked hair as Emma and Ryan found their assigned dinner companions in the main dining room. "I'm Sophie, and I've been on 12 cruises just like this one. Trust me, by tomorrow night, we'll all be best friends." Emma felt nervous about spending every dinner with strangers, but Sophie's warm smile put her at ease. Across the table sat Jack, a quiet teacher from England, helping his grandmother Rose with her menu. Both seemed kind and genuine, the type of people who would make the week more enjoyable rather than awkward. As the sun began to set over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Emma continued taking photos. She captured the elegant dining room, their table's easy conversation, and the amazing sunset view through the massive windows. Everything felt perfect, too perfect, almost. That's when she first noticed the woman in the stunning red dress at a nearby table. The woman was arguing quietly but intensely with a tall man Emma had never seen before. Other passengers seemed to avoid looking in their direction, as if sensing drama they wanted no part of. Emma instinctively raised her camera and took a few shots of the dining room's elegant atmosphere. Later, when she looked through those photos, she would discover something chilling hidden in the background, something that would change everything about their perfect cruise vacation. But for now, she simply enjoyed the moment, completely unaware that somewhere on this floating paradise, a predator was already watching and waiting. The ship's formal night transformed everyone into movie stars, with passengers dressed in their finest clothes parading through the elegant corridors like they were walking down a red carpet. Emma smoothed her navy blue dress as she and Ryan made their way to dinner, passing couples taking professional photos and families gathering for group portraits. "You look amazing," Ryan whispered, squeezing her hand as they entered the dining room. The space had been decorated with fresh flowers and twinkling lights, creating an atmosphere of pure magic. Their table companions had cleaned up nicely too. Jack wore a crisp black suit that made him look more sophisticated than his usual casual teacher appearance, while his grandmother Rose sparkled in an elegant pearl necklace that caught the light beautifully. Sophie had chosen a dramatic purple gown that perfectly matched her adventurous personality. "Now this is what I call a proper celebration," Rose said with a gentle smile, raising her wine glass toward the ocean view. 85 years old, and I'm finally taking the cruise of my dreams." Emma felt genuinely happy as she listened to their dinner conversation. Jack shared funny stories about his students back in Brighton, while Sophie entertained them with tales of her travels to exotic places around the world. Even Ryan seemed more relaxed than usual, joking around and asking everyone questions about their lives. But as the evening progressed, Emma's attention kept drifting to the woman in the red dress 3 tables away. Tonight, the woman looked absolutely stunning, her dress hugged her perfectly, her makeup was flawless, and her blonde hair was styled like a Hollywood starlet. Yet something about her seemed desperate, almost frantic. "That's Lucy Harrison," Sophie explained when she noticed Emma's curious glances. "She's traveling alone, but she's been the center of attention since we boarded. Different man every night, always some kind of drama following her around." Emma watched Lucy laugh loudly at something her dinner companion said, but the laugh didn't reach her eyes. There was something sad and scared hiding behind all that glamour and confidence. After dinner, the ship's nightclub came alive with pulsing music and flashing lights. Emma took photos of the incredible atmosphere, hundreds of people dancing, bartenders creating colorful cocktails, and the DJ spinning music that made everyone want to move. That's when she saw Lucy again, now in the center of the dance floor. The woman danced like she was celebrating the best night of her life, her red dress swirling around her as she moved to the beat. Her arms reached toward the ceiling as if she was trying to touch the stars themselves. Emma raised her camera and captured that moment, Lucy Harrison looking completely free and alive under the disco lights. It was a beautiful shot, full of joy and energy. She had no idea it would be the last photograph anyone would ever take of Lucy Harrison alive. Emma's coffee cup shook in her hands as she stared at the empty chair where Lucy Harrison should have been sitting for breakfast. The morning sun streamed through the Windjammer Cafe's giant windows, but something felt terribly wrong about this beautiful third day of their cruise. "She's not here," Rose whispered, her elderly voice filled with worry. "That lovely woman in the red dress, I haven't seen her all morning." Jack looked up from his newspaper, his face serious. "The housekeeping staff found her cabin door wide open at 6 this morning. Security has been asking questions all over the ship." Emma's heart started beating faster. She pulled out her camera and began scrolling through the photos from last night's formal dinner and dancing. There was Lucy, gorgeous, laughing, full of life. But as Emma kept clicking through the pictures, something caught her eye that made her stomach drop. In the background of a photo she had taken of Ryan near the dessert table, a figure in a crew uniform was staring directly at Lucy's dinner table. The person wasn't just glancing over casually, they were watching Lucy with intense focus, like a hunter studying its prey. "Ryan, look at this," Emma said, showing him the camera's small screen. "See this crew member? They're not serving food or cleaning tables. They're just watching her." Before Ryan could answer, Sophie hurried over to their table, her usual cheerful smile replaced by obvious fear. "I just talked to the cruise director," she said in a hushed voice. "They're asking every passenger to report any conversations they had with Lucy yesterday. The security team thinks she might have fallen overboard during the night." The word fallen hung in the air like a dark cloud. Emma knew that on cruise ships, people didn't just accidentally fall overboard. The railings were too high, and there were safety cameras everywhere. If Lucy was gone, someone had made sure she disappeared. Emma studied the mysterious crew member in her photo more carefully. The uniform looked official, but she couldn't make out the person's face clearly. Still, something about their body language seemed wrong, too focused, too deliberate. "I need to show this to security," Emma announced, standing up from the breakfast table. Her hands were still shaking, but her voice sounded stronger and more determined than she felt inside. As they walked toward the guest relations desk, Emma noticed how different the ship felt now. Yesterday, everything had seemed magical and fun. Today, passengers whispered in small groups and looked suspiciously at crew members walking by. Even the cheerful morning announcements from the cruise director sounded forced and fake. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, reminding Emma that they were hundreds of miles from land. If someone on this ship was dangerous, there was absolutely nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. They were all trapped together on this floating city until they reached port in 4 more days. Emma gripped her camera tighter, realizing that she might have accidentally photographed evidence of a crime. The question now was whether anyone would believe her, and whether the killer knew she had seen too much. The security office felt like a tiny prison cell compared to the ship's spacious public areas. Emma sat across from Chief Security Officer Williams, a tough-looking woman with gray hair who examined each photo on Emma's camera with the intensity of a detective solving a murder case. "This crew member you've circled in your picture," Officer Williams said, tapping the camera screen with her finger. "The photo is too blurry to identify them clearly, but I can definitely tell they work on the ship. We have over 2,000 staff members aboard." Emma leaned forward in her chair. "But look at how they're standing. They're not doing any work, they're just staring at Lucy's table like they're planning something terrible." Williams handed the camera back without showing any emotion on her face. "We'll investigate every possible lead, Miss Clark. But I need you to stay available for more questions. Don't leave the ship when we dock in Cozumel tomorrow." When Emma and Ryan left the security office, they found Jack waiting in the hallway. His normally calm teacher personality had completely disappeared, replaced by obvious panic and fear. "They questioned me for over an hour," Jack said quietly, looking around to make sure no one else could hear. "Someone told security they saw me talking privately with Lucy near the elevators last night. Now they think I might have hurt her." Ryan crossed his arms. "Did you talk to her?" "She seemed upset about something," Jack admitted, his voice cracking with emotion. "I asked if she needed help, like any decent person would do. Now the security team is treating me like I'm some kind of dangerous criminal." Emma studied Jack's face carefully, searching for any signs that he might be lying. 3 days ago, he had been just a friendly teacher celebrating his grandmother's birthday. Now he was the main suspect in a possible murder investigation. That afternoon, the ship docked at the beautiful Mexican port of Cozumel. Usually, this would have been the highlight of their cruise, exploring ancient Mayan ruins, swimming in crystal-clear cenotes, and shopping for souvenirs in the colorful local markets. Instead, Emma barely noticed the stunning coastline outside their balcony window. "Something doesn't feel right about this whole situation," Emma told Ryan as they watched other passengers happily leaving the ship for their shore excursions. "Sophie said drama always followed Lucy around. What if she was involved in something really dangerous?" Ryan leaned against the balcony railing, thinking hard. "Or maybe someone wanted us to believe that. If you create enough drama around a person, then when they disappear, everyone assumes they brought the trouble on themselves." Emma raised her camera again, this time photographing the crew members working on the deck below them. If there really was a killer somewhere on this ship, they were still here right now, still working their regular job, still pretending that everything was perfectly normal. As the sun set over Cozumel's beautiful beaches, Emma realized that their dream vacation had turned into a nightmare. She was no longer taking happy vacation photos, she was gathering evidence that might help catch a murderer. The scariest part was knowing that the killer could be anyone, the friendly bartender who remembered everyone's favorite drinks, the smiling housekeeper who left cute towel animals on their bed, or even someone sitting at their own dinner table every night. Emma's heart nearly stopped when she spotted him sitting alone in the theater balcony, the same tall, thin man who had been arguing with Lucy on formal night. While everyone else watched the colorful Hairspray musical on stage, his eyes were locked on Emma and her friends in the seats below. "Ryan," she whispered urgently, nudging him with her elbow. "Look up there. Red dress argument guy is watching us." The man seemed to sense their attention because he turned his head and stared directly at them. Even from far away, Emma could feel something cold and dangerous in his gaze that made her skin crawl with fear. During the show's intermission, Emma rushed to the theater lobby where the ship's photographer was showing off pictures from formal night on her tablet computer. "Hi there. I'm Beth," the young photographer said cheerfully. "Looking for any specific photos from the other evening?" Emma described the mysterious man, and Beth scrolled through hundreds of pictures on her device. "Oh yes, here he is," she said, stopping on one image. "Is this who you mean?" Emma's mouth fell open in shock. The man was clearly visible in the background of a group photo, but he wasn't wearing passenger clothes like when he argued with Lucy. Instead, he had on a crew uniform with a name tag that read James Entertainment Staff. "He works on the ship?" Emma asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Absolutely. James has been with Royal Caribbean for 3 years now. He helps organize all our evening shows and entertainment activities. Beth looked confused by Emma's obvious concern. Is something wrong? Emma's mind raced as she hurried back to find Ryan, Sophie, and Jack near the fountain in the ship's main promenade. Rose had gone to bed early, leaving the younger adults to discuss the day's frightening developments. I found something incredible, Emma announced, showing them Beth's photo. The man who was fighting with Lucy isn't just a regular passenger, he's part of the crew. He works in entertainment. Sophie's face went pale. That's absolutely against the rules. Crew members aren't allowed to have personal relationships with passengers. If he was romantically involved with Lucy and she threatened to report him, he could lose his job immediately, Jack finished the thought. And if she was going to tell the cruise line about their relationship? Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the guest relations desk. Chief Security Officer Williams was speaking in urgent, hushed tones with the cruise director while several crew members stood at attention nearby. Suddenly, the cruise director's voice echoed throughout the entire ship over the public address system. Ladies and gentlemen, we're asking all passengers to return to their cabins by 11 p.m. tonight while we conduct routine safety inspections. Thank you for your cooperation and understanding. Emma felt trapped and scared. A safety inspection at 11 o'clock at night wasn't routine at all, it was obviously a search for someone dangerous. The security team knew more than they were telling passengers, and Emma suspected that before morning came, the terrible truth would finally be revealed. As they walked toward the elevators, Emma caught a glimpse of James in her peripheral vision. He was no longer sitting in the theater balcony but standing near the casino entrance, watching their group with the focused intensity of a predator who had finally chosen his next victims. Emma's cabin felt like a cage as she paced back and forth, watching through the balcony doors as crew members with flashlights conducted their so-called safety inspections throughout the ship. Other passengers hurried along the promenade decks while security officers checked everyone's identification badges with suspicious intensity. I can't just sit here doing nothing, she told Ryan, who was checking their location on his phone. That photograph proves James had a secret connection with Lucy that he's been hiding from everyone. Ryan looked up from the glowing screen. Emma, we're in the middle of the ocean, hundreds of miles from land. Let the security team handle this dangerous situation. A gentle knock on their door made both of them freeze with fear. Emma peered through the tiny peephole and saw Rose standing in the corridor, wrapped in a thick bathrobe despite the warm Caribbean night. Mrs. Miller? Emma opened the door quickly. Are you okay? Should you be walking around during the safety inspection? Rose's normally kind expression looked deeply troubled. I need to tell you something important about my grandson Jack. About the real reason he talked to that poor woman who disappeared. Emma invited the elderly woman inside, and Rose settled slowly into the cabin's small chair. Her hands trembled slightly as she began speaking. Jack didn't just offer help to a stranger having problems, Rose said quietly. He recognized Lucy from somewhere else. He knew her from back home in London. What do you mean? Ryan asked, sitting forward with interest. Lucy Harrison wasn't her real name at all. Jack knew her as Laura Matthews. She was involved in a terrible money-stealing scandal at his school district 2 years ago. She disappeared right before her trial started, taking nearly £500,000 with her. Emma felt like puzzle pieces were suddenly clicking together in her mind. So Jack confronted her about her past? Rose's voice dropped to barely a whisper. He threatened to turn her into the police when we reached the next port. But Emma, I truly don't believe my grandson hurt that woman. I think someone else knew who she really was, and they had even more to lose than Jack did. Before Emma could respond, all the lights in their cabin suddenly flickered and went out completely. Emergency lighting immediately kicked in, bathing everything in an eerie red glow like something from a horror movie. The cruise director's voice came over the ship speakers with forced calmness. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a temporary power situation. Please remain in your cabins while our technical staff resolves this issue. In the strange red lighting, Emma heard footsteps in the corridor outside, not the steady pace of security patrols, but something quick and sneaky. She grabbed her camera and checked that the battery still had power. "Rose, please stay here with Ryan," Emma whispered urgently. "I need to find Jack and make sure he's safe." "Emma, absolutely not," Ryan protested, but she was already at the door. The hallway had become a maze of red shadows and frightening silence. Emma moved carefully toward Jack's cabin, her camera ready to document whatever she might discover. As she rounded the corner near the elevators, she saw a figure in crew uniform using a master keycard to enter Jack's room. Emma raised her camera and pressed the shutter button. The flash lit up the corridor for just 1 second, but it was enough to see everything clearly. The figure spun around, and Emma found herself face to face with James, his thin features twisted with panic and rage. "You shouldn't have seen that," he said quietly, stepping toward her with obvious bad intentions. Emma ran for her life. Emma's sneakers slapped against the deck as she sprinted through corridors bathed in blood-red emergency lighting, with James's footsteps echoing behind her like a countdown to disaster. His pursuit wasn't panicked or clumsy, it was calculated and steady, as if he had planned for exactly this moment. She burst through the doors into the empty Windjammer Cafe, now a ghostly maze of tables and chairs lit only by the eerie red glow. Emma dove behind a support pillar, pressing her back against the cold metal while trying to control her ragged breathing. Her camera's display still showed the photo she had just taken, James clearly visible with Jack's keycard in his hand, proving he had been breaking into rooms. But as Emma scrolled through her other pictures, searching for more evidence, she discovered something that made her blood turn to ice. In yesterday's pool deck photo, James wasn't wearing his entertainment uniform. He was dressed in housekeeping clothes, pushing a laundry cart. Emma kept scrolling, there he was again in a different picture, this time wearing food service clothing near the buffet line. The terrible truth hit her like a punch to the stomach. James had access to every single area of the ship. Very clever girl. Emma spun around to find James standing near the cafe entrance, completely blocking her only escape route. In the red emergency lighting, his smile looked like something from a nightmare. "You figured it out, didn't you?" he said, moving closer with the confidence of a hunter who had cornered his prey. "Multiple uniforms, multiple identities. I've been planning this revenge for months and months." "You murdered Lucy," Emma said, surprised that her voice sounded steady despite her terror. "Laura Matthews," James corrected her with cold anger. "Though I suppose you know her real name by now. She stole my entire life savings 2 years ago in London. I was one of her many victims. She took everything I had saved for my mother's cancer treatment." Emma's camera was still recording, but she wasn't sure if it could capture his confession over the ship's background noise. "I got this job with Royal Caribbean specifically to track her down. She thought she was so smart, changing her name and buying cruise tickets under a false identity. But I've been watching her, waiting for the perfect moment, learning all her habits and routines. The crew members I saw watching her in my photos," Emma realized with horror. "That was always you. Different shifts, different uniforms, different areas of the ship. I could be anywhere, anyone. The perfect invisible hunter." His voice carried a note of sick pride that made Emma's skin crawl. "What about Jack? What did you do to him?" James's nightmare smile grew wider. "Nothing yet. But he knew who she really was, which made him dangerous to my plan. Just like you've become dangerous now." Emma heard voices getting closer, the search teams were finally approaching. James heard them too, and his expression changed from confident to desperate and wild. "They'll never find your body in the middle of the ocean," he whispered, lunging toward her with murderous intent. Emma raised her camera and fired the flash directly into his eyes, temporarily blinding him. She dodged past his grabbing hands toward the cafe's kitchen area, screaming for help at the top of her lungs. Chief Security Officer Williams and 3 crew members burst through the doors just as James reached for Emma again. They tackled him to the ground before he could hurt her. The truth was finally revealed, but Emma's nightmare wasn't over yet. The morning sun painted the Caribbean waters in brilliant gold as the oasis of the seas approached Miami's familiar skyline, ending what should have been a perfect anniversary cruise but had become a week of terror Emma would never forget. She stood on their balcony, watching the city grow larger while CNN played on the cabin television behind her. The news anchor was describing their story: cruise ship killer captured, multi-identity revenge plot solved by passengers' vacation photos. "The whole world is calling you a hero," Ryan said softly, joining her at the railing. Emma touched the camera hanging around her neck, the same device that had documented both their romantic getaway and a carefully planned murder. "I don't feel like a hero. I just took pictures and got lucky. When James was chasing me through the ship, I was absolutely terrified." Jack appeared on the neighboring balcony, looking exhausted but relieved that his nightmare was finally over. "Emma," he called out gratefully. "I wanted to thank you one last time before we go home. If you hadn't discovered James's multiple uniforms in your photos, you would have been his next victim," Emma finished sadly. "I'm just sorry about Laura, Lucy. Whatever crimes she committed in the past, she didn't deserve to die for them." "Nobody deserves that kind of revenge," Jack agreed quietly. As the massive ship slowly maneuvered into port, Emma thought about how completely James had fooled everyone. He had hidden in plain sight, using the cruise ship's enormous size and complexity to become invisible while planning his deadly revenge. They had suspected Jack, worried about random crew members, and never realized their greatest danger came from someone who could literally transform into anyone. Chief Security Officer Williams had explained that James's approach was unlike anything they had seen before: stolen uniforms from multiple departments, fake work schedules, and a victim chosen specifically because she was traveling alone with a secret past that made her vulnerable. "The scariest part," Emma told Ryan as they watched Miami's skyscrapers grow taller, "is how normal and friendly he seemed to everyone. If I hadn't been constantly taking pictures, if I hadn't noticed those tiny background details that everyone else ignored." "But you did notice," Ryan reminded her gently. "That's what saved lives." Emma nodded, but she understood that the real lesson wasn't about her photography skills. It was about how much people choose not to see, how easy it becomes to trust the wrong person wearing the right uniform, to overlook predators hiding behind familiar faces and institutional authority. As the Oasis of the Seas completed its final docking procedures, Emma took one last photograph, not of the ship or the port, but of the endless horizon where ocean met sky. It reminded her that no matter how safe and controlled any environment appears, there are always hidden dangers lurking just beyond what we choose to notice. Her cruise photos had caught a killer, but they had also revealed something equally important: the danger of seeing only what we expect to see, and the courage required to look carefully at what others choose to overlook. Sometimes the most important truths hide in the background of our most ordinary moments, waiting for someone brave enough to notice what was always there. Emma had learned that lesson the hard way, but she would never forget it. The cruise was over, but the memories, both beautiful and terrifying, would last forever.